Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Gyan Timirandasya Gina Jana Salakaya Chaksu Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimakti Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine. Nirvisesa Sunyavari Pastyatya De Satarni Vanchakalpatarubhischa Kripa Sindhuve Vajapatitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namaho Namaha. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. In 1949, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami wrote one treatise called Gita Nagari. And it was a long treatise, and there he outlined his up-and-coming movement in this article called Gita Nagari. Gita Nagari indicates the ideal situation, or the ideal situation for the practice of spiritual life. So in that, Prabhupada enunciated 4 principles. 1, holy prayers, holy books. 2, revival of temple worship. 3, patterning after Gandhi's idea of Harijans, bringing people to the standard where they can be known as devotees of the Lord. And 4 was his rural community program, which he called, establishing the system of Varna and Ashrama. We studied the history of Srila Prabhupada's movement since the inception, and he more or less enunciated these 4 programs. He gave preference to holy books and holy names by beginning the Sankirtan movement all around the world, doing Harinam everywhere. The old Back to Godhead magazines, which were the periodicals of the Hare Krishna movement at that time, emphasized and illustrated Harinam everywhere. And by Harinam, the society became known throughout the Western world. And then, a little bit later, the discovery on the importance of distributing books. Prabhupada said the communists who are successful in propagating their literature, and that's how their movement spread, through the propagation of literature. Prabhupada wanted books written, printed, and distributed. And so there was a large emphasis on printing books, writing books. Prabhupada was translating many of the Vedic scriptures into English and giving his own Bhaktivedanta commentaries along with the commentaries of the previous acharyas. And then his books became more and more available and profuse. And as time went on, books were being written and distributed everywhere. At the same time, the money that was coming in from the books were used to buy buildings and establish deity worship throughout the world. And at the same time, Prabhupada was also educating and elevating people coming from Western countries who had no education in spiritual life in the science of bhakti, through his teachings, Rupa Goswami's teachings, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Bhagavad Gita that he gave us, and Srimad Bhagavatam, teachings of Lord Chaitanya, which later became the Chaitanya Charitamrita expanded. And so that was with book distribution, Harinam, temples opening, and devotees being initiated and coming up to the standard of becoming Brahmanically qualified. The movement spread everywhere in the world. The last part of Prabhupada's movement was something he adopted a little bit later, in 1974. He said, now we have to establish this Varna and ashram. And he gave the formula in lectures and in a few morning walks with some of his senior devotees. So we have to train devotees in the different Varnas and engage them in devotional service. He made a distinction between material Varnashram and spiritual Varnashram, where material Varnashram is simply by material qualifications. And spiritual Varnashram is to use those qualifications in the service of the Supreme Lord, which is above the principle of Varna and Ashram, which is called Daivi Varnashram, or spiritual Varnashram. So Prabhupada saw that as the success of his movement, which hadn't really taken hold at that time. In 1977, he gave some key statements about how this should go on. And he said, we need to build these farm communities and train devotees to become Brahmins, to become Kshatriyas, become Vaishyas, and practice Krishna consciousness with these skills, and therefore develop a social system by which all of the activities of a society would go on in an organized way with people who are qualified to carry out these services based on their tendency towards those services. And then he said, in order to do that, we have to establish the Varnashram College, where Prabhupada's movement was first to establish a class of Brahmins as teachers, and to those teachers to teach all of the other Varnas, more Brahmins, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas, and they would be the teachers. And then through this college, there would be a graduation, and there would be evaluation, and people would be designated accordingly, and that way they could serve according to their natures and contribute tremendous amount of service to the expansion of Krishna consciousness and to their own advancement in devotional service. And that was Prabhupada's general theme. Now, what he said, but it cannot be established in the cities, it has to be established in these rural areas. So he said, get these farms. So we started with New Vrindavan, Gita Nagari, and then there was, of course, some of the rural temples in India, such as Vrindavan and Mayapur and other places. He wanted the devotees to be more self-sufficient because he foresaw that we wouldn't be able to be dependent on the external energy and the material world for everything we need in order to practice and to propagate Krishna consciousness. And so he emphasized farm communities by saying the first thing we should do is plant crops, in other words, develop agriculture. He said, first, create enough food, and then that food would be used to feed the devotees and the animals at the same time. Horses, cows, and bulls. And then keep cows, use cows, protect cows, care for cows. And they are the backbone of the Varnashram system because they provide material that can be used for heating, for cooking, and they also fertilize the land, and at the same time they provide nice foodstuffs such as milk, which is necessary for finer brain tissues, which help one understand clearer philosophical and transcendental knowledge. And then he said, the cities in the Western countries will not last, so we have to build these farm communities as the future of our movement and ultimately invite people in the world to take part in this. So this is the unfinished business. So we are doing Varnashram now to a certain extent. People are working us according to their, but it's not in an organized way. It's not an organized. So it goes on in a more or less haphazard way. and that devotees are being used to serve in different ways, but mostly it's centered around city temples. But Prabhupada saw the importance of setting up a lifestyle that was free from the encumbrances of cities and the dependence on the material society to provide what we need to live. So, therefore, just before Prabhupada left, he said, only 50% of my mission. We need to institute this Varnashram system, which is Daivi Varnashram, spiritual Varnashram. And he said, get these farms, grow crops, keep cows, live simply. And he said 4 things. He said, grow your own food, make your own cloth, learn herbs and extract herbs for medicines, because Krishna has provided all the medicines within nature. There's cure for every disease in nature. You just have to find it. That's all. It's there. When I was visiting our farm community in New Talavan, there was one devotee who had studied the science of herbology and started his own business, extracting herbs and making medicines and marketing them to both the secular society and providing it for the devotee society also. So he has medicines for everything practically. So it's possible, and that's what Prabhupada also wanted. And then the last thing he said was, build your homes. Take trees and build your own homes. So Prabhupada he saw that as the future go on, a simpler lifestyle would be necessary in order to carry on our society. As the materialist society becomes more and more fraught with problems, crime, diseases, calamities, shortages, and various other types of inebrities. So Prabhupada's vision was to creating a microcosm within the macrocosm and grow that microcosm into the macrocosm, and that would be the standard. And so the Varnashram principle is the foundation by which we move forward in that area. By training devotees, engaging devotees like that, and setting up a lifestyle that is conducive to spiritual life. And he used the statement, simple living, high thinking. Yeah. The cities would go on. He said the brahmacharis and the sannyasis. Brahmacharis could preach in the city temples, and the sannyasis could travel everywhere, but the grihastas would have to live on the farms because they need a stable environment in order to educate and grow their children, and at the same time develop their lifestyle. So this is Prabhupada's vision for Varnashram. So it's happening in some places around the world. There's active programs going on to institute that. But as we stand now, it's only being done in a few places. It's not been given priority. But Prabhupada said it 50 years ago. He said, this 50% of my mission, you should take it up and complete it. And he said, it can only be done through the farm communities. Hare Krishna.